On November the 19th of 2021, the police in Sunrise, Florida, arrested a man by the name of Jean Similian, who was accused of attacking people at a local business. The suspect was handcuffed, but officers struggled to wrangle him into the back of the squad car. It was around that time that Sergeant Christopher Pulley, a 21-year veteran of the force, arrived at the scene. Pulley, with a can of pepper spray in hand, hurtled out of his vehicle and made a beeline towards Similian, who finally agreed to get into the car as the sergeant was swiftly approaching. Despite the suspect's newfound cooperation, Pulley didn't relent as he subsequently berated and threatened the man. He repeatedly told Similian to look him in the eyes before stating he was the wrong cop to play with. The suspect appeared to relish the sergeant's aggression and proceeded to egg him on, saying, "Do what you gotta do, man. You gonna mace? Mace me." As Pulley's profane threats continued, a female officer rushed up behind him and tugged on his belt, imploring him to ease off. At that point, Pulley shifted his eye towards her, shouting, "Don't ever touch me again," as he reached out to grab her by the neck. With both hands wrapped squarely around his colleague's throat, the enraged officer pushed her back, then instructed everyone at the scene to turn off their body cameras. However, Pulley's outburst up to that point had already been recorded in its entirety. Speaking to a local media outlet in the incident's aftermath, Sunrise Police Chief Anthony Rosa called Pulley's behavior that day disgusting and unprofessional, saying the body cam video speaks for itself. In the summer of 2022, it was announced that the disgraced cop, who'd already been relieved of supervisory duties and placed under internal investigation, was being criminally charged with felony battery, assault, and tampering with evidence. The following November, Pulley retired from the force amid his ongoing legal proceedings. Number 6. Andrew Lawson. A pair of deputies from the Brevard County Sheriff's Office in Florida had their lives and careers irrevocably derailed as a result of an incredibly reckless decision made on December the 4th of 2022. In addition to being colleagues, deputies Andrew Lawson and Austin Walsh, both in their early 20s, were described as best friends and roommates. While off duty on the day in question, the two had been playing video games at their Palm Bay home but decided to take a break. Shortly thereafter, Lawson reportedly brandished a firearm and jokingly pointed it at Walsh. The former then pulled the trigger twice, erroneously believing the weapon to have been unloaded. Walsh was struck in the head by the bullet that was accidentally discharged, and although his panicked roommate immediately dialed 911, there was no chance of saving his life. The county sheriff said he was devastated upon receiving news of the incident, recalling his close relationships with both Walsh and Lawson. The latter was taken to the Brevard County Jail on manslaughter charges. He cooperated fully with the investigation, having been left distraught by his life-altering recklessness. After posting his $15,000 bail, Lawson moved back in with his mother while awaiting his next court appearance, slated for April of 2023. In the meantime, his employment with the Brevard County Sheriff's Office was terminated. Number 5. Nathaniel Hendren. In January of 2019, St. Louis police officer Nathaniel Hendren and his partner were hanging out at his South City home, despite the fact that they were on duty and supposed to be patrolling elsewhere. They were joined by 24-year-old Caitlin Alex, a fellow St. Louis officer and married military veteran who was off duty at the time. According to subsequent reports, Hendren and Alex used the revolver to engage in a reckless game of Russian roulette. Hendren reportedly emptied the weapon, then placed a single bullet back into the cylinder and gave it a spin. He pointed the gun away from him and pulled the trigger to no effect. Alex subsequently took the revolver and aimed it at Hendren and pulled the trigger, but it once again did not fire. Then Hendren pointed it at Alex and again pulled the trigger, but this time the weapon discharged. The bullet struck the young woman in the chest, and although the male officers rushed her to the hospital, she was later pronounced dead. While at the hospital, Hendren allegedly told his supervisor that the shooting was accidental and that he wouldn't want to harm Alex because he was in love with her and they were in an intimate relationship. He further indicated that they were planning on moving in together. Shortly after the incident, Hendren resigned from the force He also faced criminal charges of involuntary manslaughter, to which he ultimately pleaded guilty. Hendren was consequently sentenced to 7 years behind bars, a punishment Alex's mother felt was far too lenient. While speaking with the local press, the woman said, "He should have gotten life in prison if it was up to me." In November of 2022, Hendren was denied parole, forcing him to serve out his entire term. Number 4. Harlem Brawl. In June of 2019, an alarming video surfaced online in which a pair of New York City police officers could be seen brawling with one another at the corner of West 116th Street and Lenox Avenue in Harlem. In the footage, 2 marked NYPD patrol cars, one with flashing lights, were shown parked along the side of the street. At one point, a uniformed officer emerged from the driver's seat of one of the vehicles and forcefully shoved another cop, after which a scuffle ensued. As the warring colleagues continued grappling with one another, one of them pressed the other against the side of one of the parked SUVs. Other NYPD officers eventually stepped in to break up the fight. The incident sparked an internal department review, although it's unclear how the investigation played out, and no details regarding what had triggered the dispute were made readily available to the public. Number 3. Aaron Wright. 3 officers from the Lafayette Police Department in Indiana were dispatched to a local residence in search of a wanted fugitive. On January the 8th of 2019, although the suspect wasn't present at the home, the trio of officers, which included Lane Butler and her partner Aaron Wright, were met by a large and aggressive dog, prompting them to retreat outside. As they did so, however, Wright accidentally discharged his service weapon while following closely behind Butler, striking her in the shoulder. In body cam footage of the incident, Butler was shown collapsing to the ground immediately. While the third officer rushed over to tend to her, Wright flagged down another police car responding to the scene and placed his injured partner in the back seat, but an ambulance subsequently arrived to take her to the hospital. Although it wasn't visible in the video, the department later revealed that Wright had been attacked by the dog from behind, which allegedly caused the accidental discharge of his firearm. The Lafayette police chief said the incident hadn't been the result of an act of negligence, carelessness, or otherwise reckless behavior, but rather an unfortunate sequence of circumstances. Butler, who was only days away from celebrating her 3rd anniversary with the department, was brought to Franciscan Health Lafayette East in serious but stable condition. In a social media update posted about a week later, it was revealed that she'd been released from hospital. It was also reported that Wright wouldn't face disciplinary repercussions for his role in the accident. Number 2. Stephen Green and Joseph Tyler. In the early hours of March 25th of 2016, a handful of officers from the Atlanta Police Department congregated for dinner at the R. Thomas restaurant in Buckhead at the end of a late-night shift. According to a statement later released by a department spokesperson, 2 of the officers, later identified as Stephen Green and Joseph Tyler, started bantering back and forth about who would win in a foot race. Despite the seemingly trivial topic of conversation, tensions between the 2 men eventually escalated, and Tyler threatened to punch Green in the face. The latter was initially taken aback by his colleague's hostility, but when Tyler issued a second threat, the 2 men came to blows and ultimately needed to be separated by the other officers. At some point during the altercation, Tyler allegedly pulled out his service weapon, but no shots were fired. Green, who'd been an Atlanta police officer for 5 years, was placed on administrative leave in the wake of the incident. Tyler, meanwhile, was also suspended but subsequently resigned from the force 5 days later. Want to see more cops who went rogue? Then stay tuned after number 1. We have a few more previous cases lined up after this. Number 1. Ismail Tamayo. A shooting at Stoddard Wells off-highway vehicle area, an unincorporated section of Apple Valley, California, was reported to the authorities during the early hours of May the 3rd of 2020. Deputies from the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office subsequently arrived at the scene to find 3 off-duty Los Angeles police officers, one of whom was suffering from a gunshot wound to the upper body. The victim, Mark Mascherano, was airlifted to a nearby trauma center where he was reportedly kept in stable condition. The ensuing investigation uncovered that the man had been shot by his colleague, 44-year-old Ismail Tamayo, while they and an off-duty supervisor were shooting guns on a camping trip. Tamayo was initially arrested on attempted murder charges, but later pleaded not guilty to a felony count of assault with a firearm. His police powers were stripped pending the outcome of both his criminal proceedings as well as an internal administrative review. In April of 2021, an article in the LA Times went into great detail regarding Tomeo's documented mental health struggles, which was said to have played a large factor in the shooting. The man's attorney stated that at the time he fired his weapon at Mascherano, he was suffering from PTSD-related disassociation, which allegedly caused him to revert back to his military training, believing he was in a combat setting. The incident had also been precipitated by the trio of officers drinking copious amounts of alcohol for multiple hours, which was cited as another contributing factor. Number 7. Nicolette Muniz. Officer Nicolette Muniz was investigated by her own colleagues at the San Antonio Police Department following allegations that she'd assaulted a love rival. In April of 2019, a report created in connection to the incident detailed how Muniz, a 3-year veteran of the force, had FaceTimed former SAPD officer Kenneth Moreno, with whom she was allegedly having an affair. The call was answered by Moreno's girlfriend, however, and an argument between the two women subsequently ensued. Muniz eventually coaxed the rival into revealing her home address, and the off-duty officer then went to her residence in the early hours of the morning to confront her. Upon Muniz's arrival, reports indicated that there was a physical altercation between the women. The officer allegedly elbowed the homeowner in the stomach and struck her in the face and neck in an attempt to elicit a similarly violent reaction. Rather than strike Muniz in retaliation, however, Moreno's girlfriend called the police. It was later discovered that Moreno himself had been hiding in the backyard before he ultimately left the premises through a back alleyway. Officer Muniz was arrested and placed on administrative leave following the incident. Although she'd initially faced criminal charges, they were later dropped due to insufficient evidence. In June of 2020, Muniz reportedly told a fellow SAPD officer that she'd been in contact with Moreno, which violated the terms of the order she'd received from her superiors to stay away from her former romantic partner. She was consequently issued a 15-day suspension in mid-December of 2020. Number 6. Maria Velez. In 2015, Ohio woman Maria Velez left her job as a bilingual teacher's aide at Clark School to enter Cleveland's police academy. In December of that year, the 22-year-old reportedly started working basic patrol in the department's 5th district. The mother of a male student came forward in September of 2017 to report that the officer had had an inappropriate relationship with her son during her time as a teacher's aide. Velez allegedly had several intimate encounters with the respective student throughout much of 2015. In response to the accusations against the young officer, detectives in the Cleveland Police Department's Internal Affairs Unit launched an investigation into the matter. It led to Velez being arrested during her shift on October the 19th. She was charged with multiple offenses, including attempted tampering with evidence and intimidation of a crime victim or witness. The charges stemmed from a phone call she'd reportedly made to the victim's mother, in which she told her to lie about the illicit relationship when questioned by investigators. It was reported that the patrol woman agreed to resign from the police department in the wake of her arrest. In April of 2018, Velez pleaded guilty to the charges levied against her and was ultimately sentenced to 24 months in prison plus 5 years of supervised release. Number 5. Davin Cole. At around 6 p.m. on November the 3rd of 2021, off-duty San Francisco Police Sergeant Davin Cole entered a Wright aid in San Mateo. Cole, who was allegedly armed with a loaded firearm that wasn't his service weapon, handed the pharmacist a note demanding painkillers for which he didn't have a prescription. It's unclear if anything was ultimately stolen, but Cole was confronted by 2 San Mateo police officers upon exiting the store. They tackled the off-duty sergeant to the ground after he'd resisted arrest, and he was eventually taken into custody on suspicion of robbery. Cole was reportedly admitted to a rehabilitation facility after posting bail. The suspect's attorney detailed how his client had secretly been battling an addiction to painkillers ever since a doctor had prescribed them to him for a severe canine bite in 2010. He also revealed the darkly ironic fact that Cole had been working in the police department's Healthy Streets Outreach Command and Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program, where he helped individuals with substance abuse issues stay off the streets. He was placed on unpaid leave pending an internal investigation into his arrest. Cole reportedly appeared in court via video conference in February of 2022. Number 4. Dave Rodriguez. California man Don McComas uploaded a video to YouTube on July the 29th of 2015 which showed a troubling encounter he'd had with a local police officer in front of his Rohnert Park residence. During the 5-minute clip that went viral on social media in the incident's aftermath, McComas noticed a police cruiser slowly approaching his house while he was hooking a boat up to his vehicle in his driveway. After a couple of minutes, the officer inside the patrol car was shown taking a picture of McComas with his own cell phone. He then exited the car and approached the homeowner, ordering him to take his hand out of his pocket. The officer subsequently unholstered his service weapon and pointed it at the ground. McComas maintained that he'd done nothing wrong and asked the policeman if he was suspected of committing a crime. The officer admitted that the homeowner wasn't under any such suspicion, and he then walked back to his cruiser before leaving the scene. The Santa Rosa Press Democrat later identified the officer in the video as Dave Rodriguez. Rohnert Park Police Chief Brian Masterson reportedly declined to comment on the incident, and it was reported that the city of Rohnert Park would investigate the matter. The official probe concluded that Officer Rodriguez had acted within his rights during his interaction with McComas. The latter filed a lawsuit against the city seeking more than $25,000 in damages for what he described as a violation of his civil rights and the negligent infliction of emotional distress. Court documents indicated that a settlement was eventually reached by the two parties, but the specifics of the agreement weren't made available to the public. Number 3. Rodney Dunn. On July the 9th of 2020, Arkansas woman Nicole Harper was traveling on U.S. Highway 167 in the city of Jacksonville. The 38-year-old woman, reported as being pregnant at the time, was clocked at a speed of 84 miles per hour in a 70-mile-per-hour zone by Arkansas State Trooper Rodney Dunn. The officer subsequently began pursuing Harper, who didn't immediately pull over to the shoulder. The woman would later justify the delay by explaining that she didn't think there was sufficient space for her vehicle. Instead of instantly stopping, Harper had reportedly reduced her speed to that of roughly 60 miles per hour and turned on her hazard lights as she searched for a safe location to pull over. Dunn, however, believed that the woman was attempting to flee from him. The trooper then rammed Harper's bumper in an attempt to execute a pursuit intervention technique, commonly referred to as a pit maneuver. The woman's car was sent careening into the adjacent lanes before it flipped over and slid to a complete halt. Harper reportedly avoided any serious injury during the accident, and her baby was ultimately born without complication a few months later. She was, however, charged with speeding and failing to yield to an emergency vehicle. Harper subsequently filed a civil lawsuit against the state of Arkansas, and in November of 2021, the two sides reportedly reached a settlement agreement. Court records detailed how the agreement would lead to policy changes on the use of pit maneuvers by state police. Number 2. Daria, Jalali, and Austin Hopp. On June the 26th of 2020, an elderly Colorado woman named Karen Garner exited a Walmart location in the city of Loveland with $14 worth of unpaid merchandise. Employees at the store detected the theft and retrieved the items from the 73-year-old, who allegedly pulled off one of the workers' face masks during a minor altercation that ensued. Garner subsequently began walking home, and the employees contacted local police to report the incident. A first-year officer with the Loveland Police Department named Austin Hopp found Garner picking flowers in a field alongside the road a short time later. Hopp reportedly approached the woman aggressively with the intention of arresting her. Garner, who appeared scared and confused in video captured by the officer's body cam, started to walk away from him, at which point he grabbed her arms and pulled them backwards in order to handcuff her. The officer then forced the 80-pound woman to the ground repeatedly as she continually attempted to get up and walk home. Officer Daria Jalali arrived at the scene soon after that and helped Hopp hold down Garner against the hood of a patrol car and hog-tie her. A bystander reportedly questioned the officer's use of force on the frail woman, but Jalali and Hopp dismissed their concerns. Garner was taken to the police station, where she was handcuffed to a bench as a small group of officers laughed and joked while watching Hopp's body cam footage of the arrest. In the aftermath of the incident, it emerged that Garner had sustained a fractured arm, a dislocated shoulder, a sprained wrist, and several bruises on her body as a result of the officer's aggressive exertion of force. It was also revealed that the woman suffered from dementia and sensory aphasia. Garner filed a federal lawsuit against the city of Loveland and 5 members of the police department in April of 2021. The elderly woman was ultimately awarded a $3 million payout after a settlement was reached and officers Jalali and Hop resigned from the department after facing criminal charges. The latter's trial was scheduled to begin on April the 18th of 2022. Number 1. Yvonne Wu. On the evening of October the 13th of 2021, an off-duty New York police officer named Yvonne Wu broke into her ex-girlfriend's Brooklyn apartment and lay in wait. Shortly after Wu had arrived on the premises, 23-year-old Jenny Lee arrived home with her new girlfriend, Jamie Liang, aged 24. Wu confronted them and promptly opened fire, shooting both women in the torso. One of the victims was able to contact 911, and Wu could reportedly be heard in the background of the phone call screaming, "I told you not to mess with me." When officers made their way to the scene, they came upon Wu standing outside the apartment, and she was then taken into custody without incident. Lee and Liang were both transported to the hospital following the shooting. The latter passed away a short time later, while Lee was stabilized by doctors and ultimately survived the shooting. Wu was taken to Maimonides Medical Center, where she underwent a psychiatric evaluation. The 5-year police veteran was charged with murder and attempted murder in connection to the Love Triangle shooting. In January of 2022, the slain woman's family announced their plans to file a $25 million lawsuit against the New York Police Department and the City of New York. The family alleged that the police department had acted negligently in allowing Officer Wu to retain her service weapon in spite of the fact that they were aware of her distressed emotional state that had been exacerbated by her contentious breakup with Lee. Thanks for watching. Would you rather work with your best friend at a high-stress job that causes lots of fights, or ask your grumpy supervisor out on a date? Let us know in the comments section below.